So thank you for listening to this short presentation. So I'm just going to talk about the example of our high school. So St. George's School is located in the northeast of the United States. We're in Rhode Island, and we were the only high school competing again this year. So our high school is a boarding school with students aged 14, 15 to about 18. And so they spend 4 years here. And the majority of our population, about 85%, is boarding students, but we also have some day students, about 15% of them. And so the French program, we are in the modern language department, and we have classes of French, Spanish, and Chinese, and also classical languages we have Latin for a classical language. So students have to go through a level 3 of a language, which means that some of them start at St. George's coming into our school with a level 3. So they only have to do 1 year to fulfill a graduation requirement, but then they can stay longer. So we have French up until level 6. I put it in brackets because usually students continue level 6 as an independent study, but French 5 is the last large class that we have. And so the class that participated in the DSV was the French 5 class. And so the level of this class, we use the American scale for the levels of languages. We use the ACTFL scale. And so the ACTFL levels go from novice to advanced usually, and intermediate. So we have our students in French 5. The target for the end of the semester is usually the ACTFL intermediate high level, which is about the CEFR level of B1. And then in the semester 2, which is when the DSV competition took place, the proficiency target for the end of the semester is advanced low, which is like a B1.2 or the beginning of a B2 level for the CEFR. So if you look at the comparison for reading and listening, you can see the American rating here, which is between intermediate, high, and advanced low, and the CEFR rating is about B1.1 or B1.2. And in terms of speaking and writing, the equivalent would be sort of end of B1, beginning of B2. So that's about the target level for our class. It doesn't mean that all students have that level, but it's the target for the end of the year. So I just want to talk a little bit about the students who participated in the competition. So when you see class of 23, these are the last year students. So we had Frances, Scarlett, Frankie, and then we had the twins, Alexandra and Anna Maloney, and then we had a Chinese student who started with us in French 1 and then skipped a level and took intensive classes at the Alliance Française over the summer and came back with a very high level in French 5. And then you see the students who are classes of 24, so they're going to continue one more year, and most of them will be in French 6 next year. But I just wanted to note that the students that I highlighted in red are students who are day students, and so they live in Rhode Island. So that made a big difference because in terms of their commitment and involvement, they were more, I think, committed to the local community, because the other students come from various states. So Frances comes from Virginia, Scarlett and Frankie come from upper New York, Ava comes from a different state, and Elsa comes from Bermuda, and Andy comes from China. So it doesn't mean that they were not committed to the improvement of their campus, but it means that maybe it doesn't, it's not as important for them, versus the day students who really feel that the improvement of this community will have a greater impact on their local community as well. And then I just wanted to note also that Cash Martin will become the head, one of the 3 heads for the what we call the St. George's Sustainability Board. So it's a very important club on campus here. So he was already very committed to the environment. He was already a leader for his class this year, and next year he's been elected one of the heads. So it just shows his commitment. And also one other thing is Ava Hiledgar has been elected by the entire school. So we'll have about 400 students. She's been elected the senior prefect. So it means that she's going to be one of the 5 student leaders next year. And she has been elected the one most important. So she's going to be the one who gives, the start of the school speech. And then for graduation next year, she's going to be the one also speaking. And she's going to be, advocating for all students and representing the student body for, parents, the administration, everything. So she is also a very smart student, and she's very involved in the community. So we had a very special crew this year. I just wanted to note that. So the project that the students chose is the marché fermier, so farmers market, what they call the farmers market. It didn't really have a farmers aspect to it, but I'm going to talk more about that later. So in terms of the timeline, we started in September. I started telling the students about the upcoming project, so just to plant seeds in their brains so that they knew it was coming up. But we really started in January when we started watching the movie Demain. And then one student actually participated on the Zoom with Cyril Dion. And so that was really the start of our project. And then you see that the team chairs from Rennes were with us from sort of the end of January to the end of the competition in April. So in February is when we officially kickstarted the competition. So February is when students defined the project and started their research. And then in March, they started distributing the roles and started conducting the interviews, and then started gathering, images and materials for the teaser and the presentation. And then they started practicing for the final, and all of that, as you know, took place in April. And then after the project in May is when they started to wanted to implement their project, and I will talk more about that later. So this is the logo that the students created. As you can see in the top left corner, this is the official logo of St. George's School. And so what the Scarlett Cleary, who's an advanced art student, did is she modified, you can see each corner of the logo, and she wanted to have a more farmers market aspect to it. So that's the logo that we kept. Then we had two students, the twins, Alexandra and Anna, who were very, they really wanted this project to look professional and to be professional. So from the start of the project, before I even tell them anything or ask them to do anything, they started working on a website by themselves. So they bought a domain name, and they started gathering information and started a draft, and then they pitched their project, their idea in class, and then we started being involved on their website. But it was really their initiative, and it sort of came out of the blue for us. We were really happy about it, but they worked on it by themselves. Then we have Eva Heledgar, who is the student who's going to be the senior prefect next year. She also took the initiative of launching an Instagram account even before we started the project. And so what she did is every Wednesday, she posted a "Did you know" post with a photo, and she would post, text in French and English. This is a bit blurry, but if you go on the Instagram account, that I will show you later what the account is. She posted something every single Wednesday, even when we were on spring break. She took the initiative to continue every Wednesday to sort of inform the community of all of the existing problems that we had, all the challenges we had, and their ideas. So it was really for them to reach out to the community even before they started talking about the idea of the DSV project. So I'm just going to show you very few slides from their presentation that they made. So the students started talking about all of the existing, renewable energy that we have on campus, and all of the composting and recycling that already exists. And then the swap shop system that we have, where students bring in, former books and pieces of clothing, and then can take items for free. And then they identified some opportunities of improving the state of our campus by conducting a survey for the entire community. And I took a screenshot where they had 53 responses, but I think by the end they had about 100, which was a quarter of the student population. So from their responses, they identified 3 problems, which was the first one was food waste in the cafeteria. And they felt that this was really too big of a challenge for them to tackle by themselves, because the school had already tried to address the problem and had various success, but not really. So maybe next year that could be something that the next students could work on maybe. The second one was the carbon footprint of all the vehicles that deliver food and packages every day. So as you may remember, we have a boarding population, which means that most students are here by themselves without their parents. And so what they do is they order a lot, every time they forget something, or even every time they want to, shop for clothing, every time they want to order food in the evening, even drinks, they order a lot. So that was the major issue that they identified. And then the last one was the use of plastic bottles, which is kind of counterintuitive because we have, water refilling stations everywhere, and Americans really are used to having their water bottles, but somehow there's still a lot of plastic bottles on campus. So they felt that that was an issue. And so they wondered why we had so many packages. The first response they got was that the students probably don't have a lot of information about the existing places around campus where they can go. The thing is, obviously, students cannot drive to these places, so they will have to take, either an Uber or a shuttle. There is no public transport that comes to our campus, so that's a bit of an issue. And accessibility, that's the major issue, is how students get to Newport, to the local town here. And then delivery is, students know that it's practical, it's convenient to have your items delivered to your dorm. So that's why we know that students will keep on ordering a lot, but we're trying to identify ways for them to do it in a more sustainable manner. So the solutions that the students imagined was, first of all, the communication, which is why they started the Instagram account, and they wanted to, print brochures and everything for the next year students for the next fall. And then their farmers market is sort of to encourage local purchases, but also to reestablish a bond with the local community. After COVID, I think we suffered from being very isolated, purposefully isolated, so that to protect our students, but also the students were discouraged from going downtown, or they would have to wear a mask all the time, and so students just preferred staying here in order. So that was their idea, was sort of to reestablish bonds with the local community. So the communication, what I talked about was the Instagram account is SG French Community Cares, and then their website is sgfrenchcommunitycares.com. And they're trying to publish everything in French and English. So French is more for our student population who studies French, and English is for the rest of the population here, which is the majority. And so the farmers market, their idea was to, invite local restaurants and food providers, and also clothing providers like secondhand items, and so that we could have them come to campus, visit our campus, and so that the bonds would be reestablished that way. And so the obstacles that they identified was, we cannot prevent students from ordering on Amazon, but with the help of a survey, and they realized that students most of the time don't know what is available. So they would like to have a list of vendors, and also to show that the quality, once you start ordering, once you start buying on here locally, the quality can be so much better than the things you get on Amazon. So the advantages is, I think the students were really, once they started watching the movie Demain, they realized how it is important to have a local circulation of money. And so they realized that it's very important to buy locally, to keep the money on Aquidneck Island, which is the island where our school is. And also they realized that it would be a minimum cost for our high school. So it's something that's very easy to implement, and that encourages, really a local economy versus a global Amazon purchases. So in terms of the logistics, the students wanted to have it happen on our last very important weekend on campus before graduation, which is called the Spring Festival. The only hurdle that they encountered is that they reached out to their businesses kind of too late. So each of them reached out to 3 businesses, which was, there are 11 students in the class, so they reached out to a bunch of people. But then we eventually had 3 people confirm that they could come to the market. And unfortunately for the students, one after the other had to cancel last minute. So we had one whose nephew or niece or something, graduation happened that weekend. And then some of them were short staffed that weekend, or, it was just like the 3 that actually confirmed could eventually not make it. So I think that what the students are going to do, the students who are going to be here next year, who are rising seniors, they're going to implement that in the fall. So probably in beginning of October, because that was the original idea, is to have, the new class coming in, the new students and the students returning, to have them see what is available at the beginning of the year, so that the purchases would be encouraged throughout the year. So this year they wanted to do it at the end of the year, because it was sort of the combination of the DSV project. But unfortunately for them, none of that could happen. So that's the place on campus where they wanted to have the market happen, which is on the main quad. And then these were the vendors that they reached out to. So the most important ones for them were Food Love Market, Root, and Harvest Market. They are all, vegan and organic places. And they also reached out to, thrift stores. But again, because it was the end of the year, that was probably not the best time for students to start buying clothes. But at the beginning of the year is probably a better moment. And so they had a whole marketing campaign with dates. They had a timeline for when to post what. They had, weeks of Wednesday, like weekly Did You Know posts prepared ahead of time. They published some of the interviews that they conducted. And so in terms of their timeline for the end of the year, this is when they wanted to invite the businesses, and then they were involved in the communications office. And then this is when their farmers market was going to happen, was the last weekend. So the main improvements that I made and we made for this edition, I think, which is why it was more successful than last year, is first of all, we had 11 students, and many of them day students, many of them leaders, current leaders or rising leaders. So I think that was really, we were lucky. But also our team was larger than last year. So last year we had 4 students, and this year we had 11. And having almost half of them being day students made a big difference. They also started partnering with, the St. George's Sustainability Board, the sustainability club on campus, and they also thought that reaching out to other teachers, and staff members would help them conduct their project. They were very much more motivated than last year, so they took initiative. As I said, we had student leaders who were really intrinsically motivated. I think watching the movie Demain helped them in terms of motivation, but most of them really felt that it was important to do something. And they were determined. So like I said, they continued posting on Instagram and conducting interviews even during their spring break. And the level of the students also, I don't want to say that last year's students, that I had only 4 students last year, but the French level of the students, we had 4 of them with an advanced low, so like a B2.1 level. And so I think the teachers heard it a lot on the Zoom meetings where, the students were very comfortable in French. So I think the fact that they could almost come unprepared and just, wing it, I think was very, we were lucky that they had such a good French level. And then in terms of their organization, they really worked well as a team, and they worked super well with the team chairs also. So this is the partnership with the Sustainability Club. And then the teachers that they felt was important to invite and involve in our project was, first of all, the director of operations. So George Staples came to one of our classes, I think it was at the end of February, and sort of answered all of the students' questions. So he helped them brainstorm, identify what was going to be the most efficient project. And then we had Hannah O'Brien, who's a history teacher, but she started a social entrepreneurship class this year. And so Hannah really came sort of in the middle and mostly at the end of the project, and she helped students, pitch the idea. So the students pitched in English for her, just to practice, and she gave them a lot of feedback on how to improve, how to make it more professional. She gave them some feedback on the slideshow that they prepared. And then Ed McGuinness is the director of student activities. So he's the one who's mostly in charge of entertainment. And so the students also asked him a lot of logistical questions on how to best organize the farmers market, how to reach out to the businesses, and then what, in terms of preparing the, for the tables, the tents and everything. He was, key in helping the students actually implement the market, even though sadly it could not happen this year. And so this was their final slide. This is our mascot, the dragon. And so for next year, I think we might have a bigger class because I'm going to have about 20 students in French 5. So we might have 2 groups. And a key thing that they want to do is they want to implement the market. So the next year is French. The students are going to be in French 6 are going to help the French 5 students implement it in the fall. And then the students already asked me about, the theme for next year and if there was going to be anything new for next year. So we're very much eager to know what's going to happen next year.